I don't think we, as military, if we're focused on that, but even just people in general, I don't think we give ourselves credit for the amount of planning we do, then the execution, and then the feedback loop that's built into all of that. You know, my name is Lieutenant Colonel Greg Lee. I'm a U.S. Army officer. I currently work in Army Futures Command, where I'm a portfolio manager for all of the Army's combat vehicle platforms and their combat brigade combat team formations. What I do on a daily basis is essentially prepare senior leaders for decisions. I prepare finances. I prepare program outlines, um, you know, timelines for production, capability, capacity upgrades. All of those things kind of get put together, and so that's really what that taking resources and distributing them across different programs makes me the portfolio manager. What made me kind of interested out of my job to get to PMP was that I'm going to retire here in about a year. Um, I have done everything I wanted to do kind of in my life with made 20 years in the Army. I'm ready to retire from the Army and start something new. But I didn't have a stock of what my civilian skills were. So I met a guy named Josh Atkinson with PM-ProLearn, and we started just chatting about it, through his transition, through others' transitions. What I came to realize is that, I really do have a skill that the civilian side really values, and that's planning. Planning, execution, and feedback loops, which translates very easy into project management. And as we had those discussions, I decided that as I go into the job hunt, it would probably be beneficial to myself to have some type of civilian certification for me as I went and sent my resume out in other pieces. So I talked with a lot of other people that I know that either already had their PMP or were working on their PMP. And then Josh was great. He was a critical mentor for me on how to get through the PMP process, and then what benefits that would have for me. And so I watched. I was probably a little slower to act than normal because of the unknowns. Being in the Army and doing what I've done, as it's been my childhood dream. I've done it, and now I got to figure out what I want to be when I grow up, get out there in the real world. Because they are staffed with a very high percentage of veterans. Started by a veteran, Josh is a veteran, and it's not that, hey, it's a veteran that I have to connect with, but it was their ability to connect with me to let me understand what value I have, rather than what's just on my military record with awards or badges or whatever. It's what do I have? What are the skills that I've generated over a 20-year career? And so they were able to do that and then help me see that, hey, I can be a PMP. It's not too far out. It's not a stretch from what I've been doing. I got to learn some new terminology, and I got to learn, a prescribed process that's different than what I have in the military, but it's essentially the same. And if I were to lay out my military decision-making process on one side and put, the PMBOK process over here, they overlap significantly. I just got to change some words. And so that really helped me understand PMP. It helped me figure out where I wanted to go as far as a certification. And then I did it. I pushed execute, and I took a 1-week boot camp class. I found one near me. We worked the right dates. I made sure I could take the time off of work to go all day, every day. And it was awesome. I had Stacy King was my instructor, and I still talk to Stacy, every couple of days here now. He was great in guiding me through building up my my application, my experience work hours, and then how I describe them, because it's really easy for me to lay out, here's what I did, but it's not so easy to put it in the the PMBOK knowledge, right? And say, hey, look, this is exactly what I did here. And so he was critical to helping me do that. I passed through my application first time, no issues. We took the course. I learned everything I felt I needed to learn. I didn't know that at the time, though. I kind of felt I was still, when I finished the 1 week program, I felt like I had this big unknown still in front of me. And Josh and Stacy continued to just say, "Hey, man, you got this. You got this." And I didn't feel that way. I don't know. I don't know if it was lack of understanding the unknown out there, or that it seemed very similar to things I already knew, and I was just kind of waiting for that other shoe to drop. Like, hey, I'm like, I kind of know this. I got that. And then I'm waiting on that thing that's just out there like, oh, I didn't know. But it took a little bit. I did a 21-day study course. And then life kind of pushed me back a bit. So I didn't take the exam right away. I did the course in December and in February. But I went in, I was nervous. What do you call that? Study crash course myself for about 3 days before going in, because I had time off and then it went away because of the Army works, and I didn't think I was going to get enough study time before I went in. So I crashed about 2 to 3 days right before I went in after work in the evenings. So I went into the test center. I really think I was like, hey, look, this is just, I'm prepared, and this is just the way it's going to be. And if I don't pass this thing, all right, it's okay. I've never said failure is okay, but everybody I talked to is the test is extremely hard. It's so hard. It's the hardest thing they've ever done. And so I let a little bit of doubt creep in for myself. But I took the test. I finished it in 2 hours. I felt like I crushed it at the 2 hours. I started going back and looking through the questions, just like, PM-ProLearn taught me, like, hey, okay, get the 2 that eliminate off real quick, and then focus your efforts on the 2 answers that are, potentially there. I really felt that PM-ProLearn gave me a tool to take the test. So I was able to understand how to decode it. Figure out exactly the first 2 are throwaways, then figure out, okay, what stage am I actual phase am I in? So then that determined whether or not something was right or wrong. I was able to do that pretty easily. I went back, I corrected answers for the last 2 hours. And then I just kind of stood up and said, okay, I'm done. This is going to be what it is. And when I hit okay and submit, it says immediately you passed. And I was elated. I was so happy. I let doubt creep in. And again, I was just kind of waiting on, like, maybe I missed something. I was just wrong throughout the whole test, answering something wrong the whole way. So I was happy, and then I kind of felt like, okay, I must have just barely passed this thing, because that seemed too easy. I must have just gotten by with the skin of my teeth. But when I walked outside and they gave me my final scores, I was 4 out of 5 exceed standards. And so I really did. I crushed it. And then I called Stacy and Josh, and of course they're like, yeah, man, I knew you were going to be okay. I'm like, well, I didn't feel that way, but they knew, so they saw that inside of me. But so I would say it was a thoroughly enjoyable experience, even though stressful at times, because I now have something that I can say is a civilian skill that's marketable, and it's international. So having the PMP, that can show that I've done some self-learning. I've grown beyond just my military career, and I can now carry that into whatever I decide to do as I grow forward into the civilian world. Professionally, for me, inside of the Army, this isn't a skill that I need or need to have. But it's impressed many that I've come in contact with, that I have PMP, and I have it now. I don't have it later after I got out, and I think that's important as I continue to network and go around. Is I'm still in the Army. I'm a portfolio manager. not just a project manager. I'm a portfolio manager. So now I'm kind of certified, if you will, by the military at the top end at portfolio, and then on the civilian level down here at the bottom. And so I have a future when I leave the Army to say, okay, maybe I'll start as a program manager, or maybe I'll move to portfolio management and I'll get those certifications as well. So I kind of feel like I have the whole world open to me as I enter out into the civilian world. And again, I'm going to be looking for the next full career. I'm not going to be looking just to, kind of inch along into something. I feel like PMP and that body there between PMP, the project management and the portfolio management, I have a niche, I have a place to be, and I can do that out in the civilian world fairly easily. So personally for me, I really feel that I've gained an ability to say that I can do something that I say I can do in the civilian world. The military taught me to plan, execute, feedback loop into all that, refine, and do those things. Well, now I have a civilian certification that says I know what I'm talking about, and it's not me. PMI said so. You can see the piece of paper, and that really means a lot to me because it's going to give me the confidence I need to go ahead and find a job as I transition from the military into the civilian workforce. So what I would advise anybody trying to get a PMP certification is go get a consult with PM-ProLearn, period. Just get a consult. Hear what they have to say to you. Listen to them. And if you feel that you can do this on your own, great, absolutely do it. It'll be a great journey for you. But if you feel like you already have a lot of the skills to do this, you just need the framework, you need the test taking ability, you need the theory led to you so that you can do it exactly the way the test is going to ask you, not based off of what your personal experience is, then I highly, highly recommend you go do the PMP ProLearn boot camps. Very professional staff. I really found that everybody that was in the class was wanting to learn this. So there wasn't a lot of distractions. There weren't people there to just be there. Okay. And it was well worth my investment in my time to do that. And I expect that I'll maintain the certification. So, I think PM-ProLearn has the ability to help me stay involved. And it's a company that I want to be associated with, frankly. So highly recommend their products, highly recommend their people, and I wish you the best of luck as you take on that PMP journey. I think the PMP process is a little bit confusing in the application. You see, I think it was, 4,000 hours, or, as you start looking at, well, let me count up all the hours that I worked on this thing. That's daunting. Okay. It's scary. Because you're like, what if I do it wrong? And most of us are honorable and, people, and, we have integrity. We're not trying to get this wrong, but you're asking me to go back several years and say, how long did you work on a project? For military in particular, we're deployed. I work 20-hour days. I don't know how much was directly on that project versus another, but it consumed my entire life for a good, 4 months, so how do you figure that out on your own? How do you know what qualifies for a PMP a project? What is it? The definition of a project. I read that thing, and Stacy then read it back to me, and I looked back at him and read it again, and I'm like, I don't get it. It really is that general and vague. And so, PMP ProLearn and Stacy in particular helped me walk through the problem so that I could understand what is a project and what have I done in my career. Stacy's I guess you can't say former Marine. You're never a former Marine. You're just not an active one. But, he was a Marine. And so, even though he called it the head and the deck and things like that, we were able to still talk and really get after, okay, hey man, I closed a base, that was a project. Even though it wasn't building it, I was de-scoping it and taking it apart. It's the same thing. And so how do we pull that together? And so I have to thank Stacy directly for helping me with that. He could interpret what I said I did and help me put it into the proper terminology with the proper number of hours and make that all work for me. I don't think we, as military, if we're focused on that, but even just people in general, I don't think we give ourselves credit for the amount of planning we do,
Yeah.
then the execution, and then the feedback loop that's built into all of that. Okay, so I want to build a table. Okay, well, I start doing the plans. I download plans. I watch some YouTube videos. I get my stuff from Home Depot. I come back home, I'm cutting wood, I'm figuring out, oops, I didn't cut that right. So now I got to go get more wood and have that delivered on the right time, and then boom, you get a table, and then you're doing your after action review and your lessons learned and saying, well, hey, maybe I should get all my materials and cut before I do whatever. We don't give ourselves enough. It's inherent in our human body and in our mind how we do that. So you already have it. You just need to lay it on paper in the way that PMI wants it.